Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another Incursio the Gamer Dungeons & Dragons video. Today we have with us the man that you've all been asking for. The man who you wanted to distort, and 60% of you wanted to see as a boss monster. The returnee from the Library of Ruina. The final boss monster of Intervalo 3, Yield My Flesh to Claim Their Bones. And of course the mentor of the Blade Lineage, which Merceau has an ID that mirrors Bamboo Hatted Kim. Now, he is a distortion in this boss monster, of course, but if we've gone over his history, let's talk about, his kit. Poise ID, Poise ID, Poise ID. A little bit of bleed and paralyze thrown into there. Also, he just hits hard because he wants to. He has a Bloody Jicto, which is I believe, straight longsword, and also bloodied, tattered, elongated robes from his normal version. All of this is based off of the Korean kind of variants of the real life world. Additionally, he has his bamboo hat, which is kind of torn to shreds, revealing his blue flaming eye. Now, let's go over the kit. Bamboo Hatted Kim is a distortion. Medium monstrosity, humanoid-ish, lawful neutral to start off as he is an honorable man, but eventually does turn chaotic evil as anything that gets into the reach of his sword, he just kind of kills. AC 19, natural armor, hit points 1000, keeping true to the Limbus enemy. Walking speed 50 feet. Now, before we go into stats, let's talk challenge rating. Challenge rating doesn't mean shit in this day and age. You put challenge rating 30 for, a fly, or you put challenge rating 1 for, a freaking dragon if you want. But, this day and age, it doesn't matter. I'll just say this. He is a good boss fight for 4 level 11 to 12 players. Anything stronger than that, then, you kind of do get a massacre. This is also keeping in mind you give them a couple of magical items, as it is a one-shot. Maybe like a couple of maybe like one green item and one blue item. That's already pretty powerful. Maybe one green item or just one blue item. And that'll be good enough. They'll absolutely slay this guy, but he does hit hard, as just any players. Do not put 3 in your con score. Stats, if you're going on a budget, of course, strength and dex will be your highest, but if not, I suggest these as your optimal stats. Strength being your highest again. Saving throws, proficiency in strength, dex, wisdom. Skills, acrobatics, athletics, intimidation, stealth have proficiency. Insight has expertise. Vulnerabilities, fire slashing, resistance, bludgeoning, cold psychic. Fire, I figure, is just wrath, and cold psychic can maybe be something like the lust, sloth, and pride, I believe, that he is vulnerable to. But anyways, you guys flavor it how you will with whatever resistances or vulnerabilities you want. Immune to Charmed and Frightened, Dark Vision 120 feet, Passive Perception 26. He understands language, however, as a distortion, he doesn't really speak. And he also doesn't really speak in, normally. But anyways, yeah. Challenge rating just adds the proficiency bonus. That's pretty much it. And you're not really going to need it. So let's talk traits. Once a day, Resentful Scabbard. He was an Arbor man, but under the monolith, he is distorted pretty much. Once per day, when he does a To Claim Your Bones attack, he may choose to just make it a critical hit. He is very damage oriented in this way. You will see there are a lot of To Claim Your Bones variants that I've created. Additionally, Blade Dance, upon dropping to 200 hit points for the first time, he may deal an extra 3d10 damage whenever a To Claim Their Bones related attack is used. Of course, this effect ends once combat ends and his HP recovers to full. For example, there are 2 combats. If he drops to 200 HP the first time, he may use this effect for every single To Claim Their Bones attack, and then he leaves the combat. Once he comes back at full, he may proc this again once hitting 200 hit points. Now, Growing Resentment, of course, he is vulnerable to fire slashing, resistant to bludgeoning, cold psychic, and immune to charmed and frightened. Final stand of the Blade Lineage is a little bit of homebrew that I added in, of course. When dropping to 200 hit points, he gains a new attack pattern, of course, but he removes the recharge limit on To Claim Their Bones and may make Growing Resentment To Claim Their Bones attacks instead. We'll talk about that in a bit. Let's talk actions. Blade Lineage. He first makes 2 Draw of the Sword attacks, then 2 additional attacks from the given choices below. Draw of the Sword. Plus 6 to hit, 10 feet of range, 1 target. All attacks are going to be 10 feet of range, 1 target. 16 damage slashing, slightly above average, of course, and may move up to 20 feet of his movement without provoking an opportunity attack. Pretty much you're not going to get an opportunity attack on this guy unless he moves his full 50 feet. Then you have Paralyzer and Slay. Paralyzer adds 8 to hit and does 29 points of slashing damage, giving the target disadvantage on the next attack. Slay, on the other hand, adds 9 to hit, dealing 20 damage, however, deals an extra 1d8 extra slashing damage on his next attack. Now, if you're fighting level 13, 14 higher level players, do Slay first, then Paralyzer. If not, doesn't matter what order you use it in, you can just use 2 Draw the Sword, 2 Paralyzer if you want. Now, of course, course, those are his base attacks. Let's talk about his powerful attacks. Overthrow cannot be used the same turn as to claim their bones, and you can only use it once per turn. Adds 12 to hit, 29 points of slashing damage. Additionally, he gains a he just does a critical hit when rolling an 18 or higher during his next turn. So it doesn't proc during this attack, of course. However, if you do use Overthrow, he gets a lot more critical hits. I really like the idea that he was Poise, Paralyze, and Bleed. I really fed into the Poise with this one. Additionally, the advantage. Now, to claim their bones. The first variant, plus 14 to hit, 47 points of slashing damage. Additionally, when he makes its attack, not just hits, just makes it 20 points of temporary hit points. Additionally, if this misses, he deals 14 slashing damage anyways, mimicking the Unbreakable Coins with improved Gray's Mastery. I like Gray's Mastery. Unfortunately, this is not a great sword. It is a long sword, but I liked Gray's, so I just pretty much made it Gray's. We'll talk about this one in a bit. Of course, bonus actions. Jikdo Quick Draw. He may make an extra attack action from Draw the Sword, Paralyzer, or Slay as a bonus action, which is good. Blade Dance, offensive and defensive. Offensive, only able to be used after dropping to 200 hit points for the first time. He gets advantage on all of his attack rolls until the start of his next turn. Defensive, he gains plus 3 to his AC until the start of his next turn. Now, basically, offensive, he has permanent advantage until he dies, or defensive, he has a 22 AC until his death, which is pretty good, honestly. You can also switch around. Well, whichever ones. You only do have one option per turn, though. Do as you see fit as the DM. Now, reactions. Evade, of course, add 5 to an attack to his AC. If they miss, he gains advantage on his next attack. Basically, you can double advantage on a single attack, but it has to be Draw the Sword because that is your first attack of the turn. It does add 6, which is pretty low, but it is what it is. Damage is damage. Now, I really liked Blade Lineage Merceau's version of Yield My Flesh to claim their bones. A counter that turns into an actual hit, which is super, super lovely. Or a hit that turns into a counter. But anyways, you get my point. So, if he is targeted by melee attack, he makes a attack roll with Draw of the Sword. If the attack made by Draw of the Sword beats the enemy's to hit, then he makes a Draw of the Sword attack. While the enemy's attack is nullified and cancelled, they do not make that attack action. However, if his attack roll is lower than the one made against him, for example, they roll a 15 who rolls a 7, then pretty much what happens is they get the hit on him, but then he makes a Growing Resentment to claim their bones attack. From here, of course. Upon no longer having any charges left with this Growing Resentment to claim their bones, he makes a normal Draw of the Sword attack instead, while still getting hit. Basically, reaction, he just hits the enemy. Now, Growing Resentment to claim their bones 2 times a day through Yield My Flesh. Cannot be used during the first turn of combat, meaning you can only use it during the second turn of combat of Yield My Flesh. Now, of course, plus 14 to hit, 58 damage, 8d10 this time. And if he hits and kills the target, not miss and then does graze damage, if he hits and kills, then he heals HP equal to twice the slain opponent's maximum health pool. If they had 100 health, he heals 200. And, of course, most of his effects are hitting 200 hit points for the first time in combat, meaning he keeps all these effects if he's already lower than 200, which I find really funny. But anyways, that is, of course, 2 times a day. Now, if you run out of that, you just start doing Draw of the Sword attacks. But remember, Resentful Scabbard is great. You deal critical hit, but you also have Final Stand of the Blade Lineage. He sees himself as the last one. Upon hitting 200 hit points, he removes this, pretty much recharges every third turn, meaning you can only use it on the third turn, turn 3, turn 6, turn 9. He removes that and can use Growing Resentment to claim their bones every single turn. Now, of course, Overthrow to claim their bones cannot be used on the same turn. However, I did not explicitly state that Overthrow and Growing Resentment to claim their bones cannot be used on the same turn. So, you could theoretically, if the players are like level 15 or something, Draw the Sword, Overthrow, Growing Resentment to claim their bones once he hits lower than 200 HP for the first time. This is pretty much the same, 58 damage slashing, and heals, of course. As I remember, someone in the comments was telling me they were doing a solo ID, base ID Sinclair run, and, Bamboo Head Kim just started just beating the crap out of him and healing a ton of HP, so that's also really nice. You can also do the normal to claim their bones attack, and then a Growing Resentment to claim their bones attack. Same turn. Gaining the 20 temporary hit points for acting shield, of course, and also healing if he kills. Still has the improved Gray's Mastery kind of little thing, where he does 14 damage if he misses anyways. And ladies and gentlemen, that is pretty much it for Bamboo-Headed Kim. Now, of course, I'll do a quick little overview, the TLDR. If you didn't want to watch the whole video, this is pretty much what you're going to want. High health, high strength. Once he hits 200 hit points, he gets even stronger. Additionally, he has a reaction, yield my flesh to claim their bones. If you fail an attack roll against the enemy as a reaction, you hit them really hard in return. However, you still do kind of sponge in damage. You have many features that give you advantage, you're going to want to use them. And that's pretty much it. That is the, long story short of the Distortion Bamboo-Headed Kim. But yeah, I also do have Captain Ahab and Don Quixote, the first kindred. Of course, Ahab is in her, distorted state, or her ego state pretty much, where she has that ego arm where she uses, Pip and all of them as ego weapons. But anyways, I can post those as well if people really want. But ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. Bamboo-Headed Kim, the Distortion. Really, really good, I think, for, some level 11, level 12 fights with a couple of characters. Maybe do give them some magical items, though. I would heavily suggest that. I've had players kick the Don Quixote's butt, even though he's way stronger than Bamboo-Headed Kim, and has so much more damage. A bunch of level, I think, like 13 players with like one blue item each kicked his ass so hard, not a single player death. It was absolutely hilarious. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the Distortion Bamboo-Headed Kim. I hope you all enjoyed this one, and yeah, I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye and good night.